Hey there, YouTube. Welcome to Monday's edition of The Breakfast Club. I'm Got That Funk. I'd like to thank you for joining me. And I'm still in my work rags because I am late home from work today. I feel gritty and dirty and horrible, like I need a bath. And I'm also starving hungry and I want to have dinner. But if I do those things before making my video, I will not have time to make my video because my roommate next door goes to bed rather early. Anyway, without further ado, 10 random facts about me. Now, normally I'd stick this kind of video on my own channel, but since Wayne tagged all the Breakfast Clubbers to do it, and the spirit of this channel is all about conversation, I'm going to engage it here rather than make a video there. And the fact is I've got nearly 1,000 videos on my own channel which talk about me in great detail, but I'm not going to tell the audience here or Wayne to go and watch all my videos to get to know me. I think that would be a bit redundant. You already know those videos are there. So I've struggled over the past couple of days to try to come up with things to talk about in this video which I haven't already mentioned on my own channel, and I can't. So some of these things I have talked about before, but hopefully I'm bringing it to a new audience, or predominantly new audience, here on the Breakfast Club. Fact number 1. I grew up on a farm. I am a country boy. I grew up in rural California, Sonoma County to be more specific, and yeah, our farm was about 4 acres, so it wasn't a commercial farm. It was more what I would call a homestead farm. We had 3 acres of apple orchards on the farm, which weren't very productive. We didn't really harvest the apples ourselves. We had one of my cousins used to come over and harvest them sometimes. But basically, yeah, we had 3 acres of orchard that surrounded the homestead part, and then we had the home with, you know, obviously the family house, a tank house, a garage, and a barn on it. We also had 2 fish ponds and redwood trees and pine trees on our property. It's lovely, really. Anyway, so yeah, I grew up on a farm, and when you grow up on a farm, you learn to work pretty hard. You develop a pretty good work ethic. There's always more to be done on a farm. And I detested that at the time, obviously, but it's done me a lot of good in my life, you know, not being afraid of hard work. So that's one thing that I don't know that I talk about very much on my own channel. Another thing that I've never talked about on my own channel, I'm actually proud of myself for thinking this up, but you'll understand instantly why I never talk about it on my own channel. Because I fully expect some commenters to take the piss down below, but whatever. The past is the past, and I am who I am, and since I'm quite comfortable with who I am, I don't really see any reason why I shouldn't share this. Right. When I was a kid, off and on, I was a bedwetter for a long time. I think I stopped wetting the bed around the age of 3, like most kids usually do. But when my mom got engaged to my new dad, when I was coming up towards 5 years old, I started wetting the bed again, and I wet the bed again for about a year, I think, pretty much consistently, and then sort of off and on, more off than on, for a couple of years. Then we moved house to Sonoma County, and when we moved, there was an awful lot of tension in the house, and I had, I think, the stress of moving and the tension in the household as a result of moving just started me off wetting the bed again, and I wet the bed, you know, off and on, but more on than off for till past my 10th birthday for sure. And yeah, I looking back at it now, you know, I've mentioned before on my own channel that me and my dad didn't really get along very well when I was growing up. And if I'm honest with myself, you know, my dad, having sort of taken me and my sister on when he married my mom, he probably was having a hard time. You know, he's a bit of a chauvinistic, machoistic kind of a guy, or certainly was back in the 60s and 70s, and I think he just found it impossible to be proud of a scrawny little bedwetter. I think it definitely is partly responsible, at least, for why we never bonded properly as father and son, because I was a scrawny little bedwetter. In school, fact number 3, I was ridiculously smart for my age. And we had a competition when I was, I think, in 6th grade. It was called the Knowledge Bowl, and basically we had 2 6th grade classes in my school, 2 5th grade classes, 2 7th grade classes, and 2 8th grade classes. And so the 5th graders paired off against the 5th graders, the 6th graders paired off against the 6th graders, and so on. And when we paired off against the opposite 6th grade class for the Knowledge Bowl, it was like a trivia question, and all the questions you should have known if you've been following along in your schoolwork. You should have known the answers to these questions. And so when we played the 6th grade class, which was our first in the tournament, you end up playing all of them, but our first in the tournament was we played our opposite 6th grade class, and I literally our section of the Knowledge Bowl was half an hour long, and I literally answered all but 4 of the questions myself. Every time the buzzer went off and the light went on the table, it was me. And the audience was getting really, really tired of it within 10 minutes, and it went on and on and on. And I just, if I knew the answer, I'm pressing that button, man. Boom, boom, boom. Needless to say, my team won because I think I only got one answer wrong. Of all the answers I answered were right except for once. And that was how far is the sun from the Earth? And I think I said 100 million miles, and it's obviously 93 point something on average, or 8.5 light minutes if you want to put it that way. Anyway, I got that question wrong, but all the rest of them I got right. And afterwards, no one at school ever looked at me the same again. That definitely affected sort of my overall feeling of being ostracized from my peers. You know, I've never fit into groups my entire life. I've always been something of a loner, which might surprise some people because I tend to get along with people pretty well. I just don't fit into groups so well. That's always been the case. Fact number 4, I think. In 1989, exactly 2 weeks before I married my first wife, I officiated a wedding. And that was my friends Roger and Cherie. They got married in a beautiful redwood grove in California. And I'm very proud of the fact that Roger and Cherie are still married today, and happily so. It makes me feel good that a wedding I was a part of in that way has turned out to be a happy marriage. So, and I'm still friends with them on Facebook now. I haven't seen them for 20 years, but we are still friends. And in that sort of same vein, and this is fact number 4B, I am a reverend. I wasn't a reverend when I performed the wedding, but I became a reverend in the late 90s. I'm a reverend in the Universal Life Church, just like Bionic Dance is. And the reason is because the Universal Life Church has 2 tenets which I think are, you know, pretty much indisputably worthwhile. Number 1 is, you know, try and do what you think is right in life. And number 2 is try to do what you can to promote religious tolerance in the world. I think those are both things I would be doing anyway, and since I could be called reverend if I wanted to be, I thought it'd just be kind of cool, so I did that. Fact number 5, when I was a teenager, in an effort to bond with my dad, I tried really hard, all sorts of different ways, off and on throughout growing up. And when I was coming up for 15, I asked my dad if I could join the fire department, because he was the fire chief in the local department. Now, normally you have to be 16 to join the department. Because I was the chief's kid, though, he said when you turn 15, you can join. So I did. And I had been a volunteer fireman for about a year before what I'm about to tell you happened. I was in my room listening to the Beatles one night, and I heard the indisputable sound of a car wreck on the corner down at the bottom of the lane. And so I jumped into my fireman kit and ran into the living room. I was supposed to be in bed. My dad was at first kind of pissed to see me, but saw I had all my gear on. He's like, "What's wrong?" I said, "Dad, there was just a car wreck on the corner." He said, "Are you sure?" I said, "I'm absolutely sure. I heard it." And so he got into his gear, and it literally like 150 feet from our front door, there was a 3-car accident. And one of the cars had a couple in it. It was an MG Midget. And it had a pickup truck which literally drove over the top of it. And so the people in that MG were pretty fucked up. And my friend Donnie, who's also a fireman, son of a fireman volunteer, who also lived on the opposite street to us, he came down at the same time, and my dad told me to hold traction on the woman and Donnie to hold traction on the guy while other firemen were dealing with people in the other 2 vehicles. And while I was holding traction on her neck to hold her head still so she didn't snap her neck or anything like that, I had, obviously my fingers could feel the pulse in her neck. And to make a long story short, this woman, who was in her early 20s, died in my hands. I was only 16 at the time. And of course I couldn't let go of her. I couldn't do anything. I'm not qualified to pronounce someone dead. I had to hold her like that for nearly half an hour until the EMTs came. And then they took over from me, and then it was sometime after that before the coroner came, because it was clear that they were dead. Anyway, so that's something that'll change your life. If someone dies in your hands, they both people in the MG had a beer between their legs, and that deliberately definitely contributes to one of the reasons why I don't really enjoy drinking very much, and also why I have absolutely abhor people who drive drunk. So there's that. Right, fact number 6, I think. I've been online now for 19 years. And my first ever internet name, which I still have one email account with this name, is the Yes Guy. Right, I'll just skip right past that one so it doesn't need too much elaboration. Now, it's not so much true at the moment in my life, but throughout my adult life, when I've been single, I have been relatively promiscuous. In my 20s, I tried to be promiscuous and failed miserably. In my 40s, I didn't really try very hard and got laid all the time. It's kind of funny. And my I have slept with women young and old. I am neither ashamed or proud of it. It is what it is. The oldest person I slept with was born in the 1930s, late 1930s, and the youngest person I've slept with was born in the early 1990s. So you can make of that what you will. Right, I'll tell you a little bit of a story now. This is going to go on a bit, and I am sorry about that, but I think I'm going to tell this story that I've told before on my own channel because this is an important story. This is something meaningful that I can share with you, which not only helps you get to know me, but I think there's a good moral at the end of the story. I met my first wife on the telephone. I used to be a DJ on the radio in California back in the late 80s, and I was working at a rock and roll station when I got called up by my boss to come in and work on his shift, not my own, because he had a management meeting to go to. So I went in, and he is on the air from 10 in the morning till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and every day at 12 he would do an all request hour. He told me to start taking requests sometime between 11 and 11:30, and as soon as I fill up the roster, not to take any more requests, which is exactly what I did. It takes about 15 minutes to fill up an hour's worth of requests, answering the phone off and on, which I did. And so then after that, I just let the phone blink and blink and blink, and I didn't answer it because I didn't want to give anybody false hope and tell them I was going to play their song when I knew damn well I couldn't. So I let it blink for ages, and I was looking at the roster and adding up the minutes of the songs, and I realized I had about 57 minutes worth of songs, and I might be able to squeeze in one more. So I went bam, and I hit the button on the phone, and lo and behold, on the other end of the line, there's an English accent, and this girl says, "Hi, it's my birthday, and I want you to play a song for me, please." And I said, "You don't have to fake an accent or pretend it's your birthday. It's an all request hour. I'll still play your song for you." And she's like, "But it is my birthday, and I'm British." And I'm like, okay, I didn't really believe her at the time. But I'm like, okay, what is it? And she asked for "I'm Running" by Yes. And I said to her that I don't think I've ever had a request for Yes by a girl. And that's kind of amazing because I'm like the biggest fan of Yes in the world, and I didn't even know chicks liked Yes. And she's like, "I'm their biggest fan." And I said, "That's not possible. I'm their biggest fan." 7 months later, we were married. And the funny thing about that is, there are two human beings in the world, my children, who exist because I punched that button. I answered that phone when I wasn't supposed to answer it. I wasn't even supposed to be there that day. And the reason I like telling this story so much is because it's a very vivid demonstration of the real life consequences that you don't necessarily know what the decisions that you make in life are going to turn your life in a completely different direction. And because I answered that phone, I have two beautiful offspring, a daughter and a son. I have moved to a different country and made dozens of very good friends that I'll cherish for the rest of my life, all of which happened because I hit that button when I shouldn't have. So you can take that for what it's worth. I also wanted to share a story about how I named my daughter. After me and my first wife sort of started seeing each other romantically, we didn't talk about marriage straight away, but it was a pretty fast process, I have to admit. You know, from the time we started going out in that sort of way till the time we got married was about 8 or 9 weeks, something like that. And shortly after we started seeing each other romantically, I had a dream that I was visited by an angel, and the angel told me that you're going to have twins and you have to name them Asha, which didn't make sense because why would you need one name for twins? It didn't make sense. But we were married in September of 1989, and 9 months and 7 days after we were married, my daughter was born. 15th of June, Gemini, sign of the twins. And we just thought we had to go with the dream. Neither one of us really believe in angels as such, but it just seemed like it would have been incredibly wrong to have a dream like that and not name the baby what the angel told me to. You can make of that what you will. I think it's a cool story, though. My kids are grown up now. I raised them for the most part myself. My first marriage failed after about 3.5 or 4 years, something like that. And I was lucky enough to talk my first wife into letting me have custody of the kids. Had she challenged me in court when we first split up, I know for sure that they would have given them to her. But because I was the one doing most of the child maintenance and everything while we were together, it just seemed to me sensible for me to raise the kids. Also, I didn't want out of the marriage and she did, and I'm like, well, look, I'm not leaving. So if you want to go, go. And she did. So I got to have the kids on the promise that I promised her, hand on my heart, that I would never take them away and move off to America with my kids because I wouldn't want my kids to grow up not knowing their own mom. I grew up not knowing my real father, and I said to her I would never do that to my own kids because I know how it fucked me up when I was growing up. And I lived up to that, which I'm very proud of. Last but not least, 15 minutes, fuck. My favorite food in the whole wide world is chocolate-covered donuts. Caramel donuts are good too. It's a toss-up almost sometimes. It depends on the chocolate, it depends on the caramel, and it depends on the texture of the donuts. But generally speaking, donuts, man. I fucking love them. There's 10 random facts about me. I think that's 10. Might be 11. Anyway, chew on that. Let me know what you think down below in the comments section. I hope JJ Talks chooses to illuminate us with some facts about herself in tomorrow's video. But if not, I'm sure she'll have something interesting to talk about. Until next week, I want to thank you for watching this video. Let's talk down below, and I'll see you again next time.